For Monday, May 20, 2024 to order, and I invite you all to please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk Tamer, please call the roll.
Brennan.
Here.
Irby.
Here.
Deuter.
Here.
Verimus.
Here.
Hill.
Here.
Schenko.
Here.
Jensen.
Here.
Graham.
Here.
Cahill.
Here.
Toludo. Absent. Park. Absent. Nudera.
Here.
Bastido.
Here.
Nardini.
Here.
12 present, 2 absent.
12 present, 2 absent. We have a quorum. Item 2, receipt of written communications from the public. Clerk Tamer, I see we have a number, maybe 3 emails here. Were they delivered to the entire council?
They are. They're on everyone's dais.
All right, thank you. And on board docs, very good. If anyone else in the audience has a written communication that they would like to deliver to the council, please raise your hand. Seeing none, we'll go on to item 3, public forum. Clerk Tamer, has anyone signed up this evening to participate in public forum?
Yes, Mayor. We have Jenny Shang Honing.
All right. If you're participating in public forum, please step to the back microphone next to our police chief there. You'll have 3 minutes. Please state your name. Your address is optional, but it helps us to get back to you. You don't have. We'll call you up when it's your turn for public forum. Well, who's going first? So we have to have someone do it. Who would you call first?
Jenny.
Jenny? Yes, please. All right, we'll call you in order, and then if you didn't get a chance to sign up, we'll do that. So you have 3 minutes. Thank you. Proceed.
All right. As you just heard, my name is Jenny, and I'm a resident living on Argyle Avenue, which is south of St. Charles, 1 block over from Spring Road. So I'm actually really against raising the current speed limit of 20 miles per hour to 25 miles per hour, as indicated in the neighborhood traffic study area number 3. So I believe the rationale to increase speed limit for community consistency doesn't really benefit the community. Why do we need community consistency on speed limits? Instead, by increasing the speed limit, you're just inviting drivers to drive faster on our residential streets, which on our street, I think we count about at least 40 kids on our street. So as members of the safety committee, by considering this change, are you really considering the safety of this neighborhood and the children in the neighborhood? I can speak for our street when I say that most of the parents of young children on our street are very concerned about speeding cars. Many use Argyle Avenue as a through street to avoid traffic, stop signs, and lights on Spring Road. Why doesn't the traffic study take that into consideration in the recommendation? Additionally, I want to provide some facts and figures published by the National Center for Statistics and Analysis based in DC on traffic safety. So in 2022, there were about 188 child pedestrians killed in traffic crashes. 76 of those 188 are those killed that occur in urban areas, much like a city in Elmhurst. 133 of the 188 children were struck by the front of the vehicle, meaning they were trying to cross the street and they crashed head-on to a vehicle. You might think that 188 in the nation is not that large, but I think that's 188 too many. The yearly study also shows that children are more likely to be struck in an urban area on a street not at the intersection in the late afternoon or early evening. Children dart out mid-block away from an intersection and getting down from buses without looking for traffic. These figures have not changed in the report that I saw from 2020 to 2022. So kids of preschool age, which are a lot of our kids on our street, basically from 1 to 7, are most often struck as they enter the roadway at mid-block. This age group is at risk because of their knowledge and key perceptive skills concerning traffic have not been developed. So how can we stop child pedestrians from getting injured or worse? Definitely by not increasing the speed limit. So we as our parents, we're doing our part to educate our children to look both ways when they cross the street. But please, as a community, I ask that you do your part to ensure that our streets are safe. So we should really be looking at traffic calming signs, not increasing the speed limit. So lastly, as you are aware, Elmhurst continues to grow every year with young families coming in, moving in from the city and elsewhere. In fact, in Argyle in the last 4 years, our street has turned over with many young families moving in. Please continue to keep the city safe, our street safe, and attractive for young families to come to. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Karen Flanagan.
Karen Flanagan. Again, please state your full name. Address is optional.
I am Karen Flanagan.
You can raise that up if you like,
Instead of bending down.
wherever you want. Yeah.
Karen Flanagan. I live at 405 South Argyle, right across the street from Jenny. In fact, we're new fast friends. I moved to Elmhurst about a year and a half ago, and I've only recently met her and her couple of kids, and our kids play together, and oftentimes they're crossing the street. And so I'm here on behalf of my 7 and 5-year-old, Jenny's kids, and all the kids on Argyle, which I would just emphasize. I won't be as eloquent as Jenny, but I will say Argyle is definitely a pass-through street. People fly down there. We're also close to a high school, and so from my perspective, that includes younger drivers and more inexperienced drivers, high schoolers who are maybe not as careful or conscious of the community and when they're driving. So I echo Jenny's sentiment about the objective of the change, and it just doesn't resonate at all. I'll just implore you from a practical sense, right? Continuity and consistency of speed limit across the neighborhood streets kind of in and of itself doesn't really make sense from from an objective perspective, right? We have different speed limits all, on highways, on different streets for different reasons. And that, the objective of continuity and consistency just doesn't make sense. The other thing I would say is the cost here is definitely outweighs the benefit, right? If you think about the purpose of speed limits and the incentives they are trying to achieve and drive, increasing the speed limit certainly doesn't help from an incentives perspective. We all know how this works, right? People drive 10 miles over the stated speed limit, and so, the people who are already going 30, 35 are just going to bump that up because they feel like they have the permission to do so. None of the streets are being monitored. Nothing is being necessarily enforced. And so it's almost giving people a free ride. The other thing I would say, I mentioned the cost of something like this is enormous from my perspective, and I think a lot of people would echo the same. The realistic cost here is a fatality or a pedestrian injury, not crashes, right? We're talking about something very severe happening as a result of something. The other thing I would mention is I don't entirely understand why now this is on the docket or even being considered. I mean, for years, right, the speed limit has been 20, why now? And so I would ask who commissioned the study and why, and what we're actually trying to achieve here. So I rattled off a lot, but I'm very, very against this, and I echo that all of the families on Argyle, at least, and now you'll hear from others, feel the same.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Barb and Marty Gallagher.
Hi, I'm Barb Gallagher. I live at the corner of Mitchell and Garfield, 396 South Mitchell. I've been a resident of Elmhurst since 1972. I've lived in this house on Mitchell for about 50 years. Mitchell is a street that is one long block. The 300 and 400 block of Mitchell is one long block. There's no intersecting street. So when people leave St. Charles, they fly down Mitchell. Sometimes they'll turn the corner to go west on Argyle, and they fly around Mitchell and then get to Argyle. And sometimes in years past, when the situation was not as grave as it is now with guns, and so on. I've even kind of waved my hands and said, kind of slow down, people. Of course, that doesn't do any good. So if you increase the speed limit 5 miles per hour, the people will go more, certainly more than that. There are approximately 30 kids on our block. So to increase the speed limit, most of these are young children. To increase the speed limit is probably not a feasible thing to do in light of all the small children. And I would say, why now as well, when we've lived with 20 for, in my case, for the last 50-some years, why now? I am the voice of many who were not able to be here tonight. Thanks.
Thank you.
Steph Christian.
Did Mr. Gallagher want to speak?
Oh, yeah, Mr. Gallagher? Did Mr. Gallagher want to speak too?
No,
Okay, all right, thank you.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Christian. I live on the corner of St. Charles and Mitchell. I've been there over 30 years, and it was very interesting when this study started coming out to the community. I was just about ready to start calling the police station, talk to the traffic division, to ask them to set up some cars to track these people who are speeding down our street, because they have in the past. We haven't seen it in probably since last summer, maybe even longer ago, but they used to park on Garfield and Mitchell, where the Gallaghers live, and catch the people flying down Mitchell. I see them all the time. They turn the corner off of St. Charles Road, and as soon as they're around the corner, they're hitting that accelerator and they're flying down Mitchell. They're flying all the way to the end to go to Eggleston or to Argyle, and I don't know where they're going because, of course, I'm not following them. But everything that everyone has said, I agree 100% with, but I'm just sharing that I witness it all the time. I'm always out in the yard, always gardening, and it's very dangerous. We have a lot of children in the neighborhood on both of those streets, and we need to protect them. And raising the speed limit by 5 miles an hour just because you want to keep it all, you know, the same is not a good reason to do that. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
That's all that's signed in, Mayor.
All right. Is there anyone else who wanted to make public comment but did not have the opportunity to sign in for it before the meeting started? Please raise your hand. All right, thank you all for making public comment. We will close public forum tonight, and we'll move on to announcements. Item 4.
There was not a second sheet, no, I'm aware of.
No? All right.
I saw the one.
All right. Announcements, any announcements from the dais? We're having a little, is there anyone else that wanted to make public comment? Okay. It's still closed.
Was there another sheet?
All right, announcements, agenda item 4. Any announcements from the dais? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Clerk Tamer, please read the consent. Actually, before we do that, I'm going to pull from the consent agenda item 5.15. We'll bring it back next meeting. I see a couple of changes that we need to make before we're ready to proceed on that. So, Clerk Tamer, if you'll read the consent agenda minus item 5.15.
5.1, executive session meeting minutes of the Elmhurst City Council on May 6, 2024. 5.2, minutes of the regular meeting of the Elmhurst City Council on May 15, 2024. 5.3, minutes of the regular meeting of the Elmhurst City Council on May 6, 2024. 5.4, accounts payable May 20th, 2024, $2,953,248.19. 5.5, report case 24 ZBA 04, Roosevelt at Salt Creek sign variations, 400 West Butterfield. 5.6, report E1Q for a cause request. 5.7, report concrete streetlight pole purchase. 5.8, report 2024 crack sealing and seal coating program. 5.9, report 2024 pavement striping program. 5.10, report 2024 concrete pavement patching program. 5.11, report 2024 asphalt rejuvenation program. 5.12, report purchase of one Chevrolet Silverado EV3 WT. 5.13, report purchase of one Ford F550 and one Ford F450 4x4 dump trucks. 5.14, an ordinance granting an amended conditional use permit for preliminary and final plan unit development with the site development allowance for the construction of a parking lot upon the property commonly known as 188 West Butterfield Road, Elmhurst, Illinois, Timothy Christian Schools. 5.16, an ordinance declaring surplus property as obsolete and authorizing the disposal of the surplus property, police electronic equipment. 5.17, a resolution authorizing water treatment chemical purchases for the water pumping stations and water reclamation facility operations. 5.18, a resolution approving and authorizing the execution of the joint funding agreement for state-let construction work for the York Street Butterfield Road Improvements Project for the City of Elmhurst, Illinois, IDOT Section Number 17-00129-00CH, IDOT Job Number D91-01718, IDOT Project Number 9YZW385. 519, a resolution approving and authorizing the execution of the joint funding agreement for state-lit construction work for the North York Street Sidewalk Improvements Project for the City of Elmhurst, Illinois, IDOT Section Number 17-00188-00 SW, IDOT Job Number C9118620, IDOT Project Number 73KW293. 5.20, a resolution approving and authorizing the execution of the local public agency engineering services agreement for the North York Street Sidewalk Improvement Project. And 5.21, a resolution to approve and authorize the execution of a professional engineering services agreement by and between Clark Dietz, Inc. and the City of Elmhurst for the Park Avenue Bridge Rehabilitation Project, construction phase services.
Thank you, Clerk Tamer. Is there any item on the consent agenda that any alderman would like to remove either for the purpose of additional discussion or voting against? Alderman Irby.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to pull 5.15. 5.15.
5.15. Is that the liquor ordinance?
No.
That is 5.
Sorry, 5. Did I say 5.15? I meant 5.5. I apologize. That's a zoning case 24 ZBA 04. Apologize.
All right.
5.1 or 5.5.
All right. Anyone else? All right. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda minus items 5.5 and 5.15? Alderman Nudera with the motion. Alderman Vestito with the second. Clerk Tamer.
Brennan.
Aye.
Irby.
Aye.
Deuter.
Aye.
Varimus. Aye. Hill.
Aye.
Schenko.
Aye.
Jensen.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Cahill.
Aye.
Toludo absent. Park absent. Nudera.
Aye.
Bastido.
Aye.
Nardini.
Aye.
12 ayes, 0 nays, 2 absent.
I'm sorry, one more time.
12 ayes, 0 nays, and 2 absent.
Thank you. 12 ayes, 0 nays, 2 absent. The consent agenda is adopted minus items 5.5 and 5.15. Proceeding to report 5.5. Clerk Tamer, please read the report.
Therefore, the Development Planning and Zoning Committee recommends that the City Council approve the 5 variations requested in Case 24 ZBA 04 at the property commonly known as 400 West Butterfield Road, Elmhurst, Illinois. The City Attorney is hereby directed to prepare the necessary documents for City Council approval. Signed, Alderman Marty Deuter, Chair, Alderman Jennifer Varimus, Vice Chair, and Alderman Tina Park.
We have a motion for approval of item 5.5. Motion by Alderman Deuter, second Alderman Varimus. Alderman Deuter.
Thank you, Mayor. This report from the Development Planning and Zoning Committee recommends approval of sign variations related to the replacement of 2 signs located at 400 West Butterfield, the property that is now called the Roosevelt at Salt Creek. The sign locations are bordered by IDOT right-of-way. Because of the right-of-way, the signs are set back unusually far from the roadway, which affects their visibility. The applicant attended the committee meeting and walked the committee through the calculations that are used to determine the size of sign lettering, which factors in the distance to the roadway and the speed of passing cars. The Zoning and Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of the requested variations, and the committee agrees with the commission's findings. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Deuter. Alderman Irby.
Thank you, Chair Deuter and Mayor. This issue is a process issue to where, per our code under the Chapter 22 zoning, 22.25 amendments, Section C, application for amendment procedure, then Section 6 has a paragraph under it that reads as follows. The zoning administrator, upon receiving an applicant or an application for amendment, shall transmit the application within 30 days along with all pertinent data filed therewith, comma, to the Zoning and Planning Commission for review and recommendation, comma, and this is the emphasis I want to add, with a copy to the City Council. I was not present. I was out of state during this period. This item that we're talking about in this case, 24 ZBA 4, is in Ward 7. So I have a vested interest, obviously, for my constituents. I was not in knowledge of this case until I got back on May 2nd and had very little time to look at it. I was worried about it from the beginning, fired off some emails appropriately, I thought, to show my items of issues that I had with it. It's hard to prepare for a case when you don't have enough time. I talked to the owner and the project manager on the side of this variance, and I think we've during the ZBA case, or not the ZPC case, there was some question of illumination. I was wondering, okay, what's the problem with the illumination? So I went at night and looked at the existing sign. It's lit up very brightly. It's already 100 square feet with another 20, 30 square feet of signage that doesn't have text on it, but it holds the sign. The new one is going to be even more structure to hold it, and it's 135, 40 feet, whatever. So it's about a 40% improvement just on the pure signage, and so it's bigger, quite a bit bigger. So the whole sign is 225 roughly. I'm not looking at my notes, but it's marginally bigger. Not marginally. It's almost double the size for the whole structure. So then I thought about, what about nighttime illumination on this? How's this going to look? And I always thought the current sign at night was huge, and so I'm going to be worried about this one. So I talked to the owner about it, and I will be for this report. Pending that we know that they hold true to the 50 candle feet at the 6-7 foot distance from the minimum width of the sign. So he understands that, and I had a discussion with him. So, but the reason I brought this out tonight was because we're not getting a copy on City Council per the code. It makes it much easier for me to step in, do what my constituents elected me to do, and that is represent them with zoning cases and other items as well. And some of the zoning cases move pretty quick. So I would prefer and implore that we all get a copy of the applications that are variances under 22.25 as I've read. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Irby. Additional discussion? All right. Clerk Tamer?
Brennan?
Aye.
Irby?
Aye.
Joyder?
Aye.
Verimas?
Aye.
Hill?
Aye.
Schenko?
Aye.
Jensen?
Aye.
Graham?
Aye.
Cahill?
Aye.
Toludo, absent. Park, absent. Nudera?
Aye.
Bastido?
Aye.
Nardini?
Aye.
12 ayes, 0 nays, 2 absent.
12 ayes, 0 nays, 2 absent. Report for 5.5 passes. Committee reports, item 6.1. Clerk Tamer, please read the report.
It is therefore the recommendation of the Public Affairs and Safety Committee that the City Council approve the Neighborhood Traffic Study, Area Number 2, final report. The city consider budgeting dollars in future years for the implementation of the recommendations, and that the city attorney be authorized to prepare the necessary documents, including any municipal code changes for City Council approval. Signed, Alderman Michael Brennan, Chair, Alderman Jacob Hill, Chair, Vice Chair, absent Alderman Guido Nardini.
All right, may I have a motion to put report 6.1 before the council? Motion, Alderman Brennan. Second, Alderman Hill. Alderman Brennan.
Thank you, Mayor. The report before us tonight is the second neighborhood traffic study that we've done here in Elmhurst with the desire to review our neighborhoods, neighborhood streets to ensure proper signage is in place for optimal safety. Area number 2 is contiguous with the first traffic study area in College View. Area 2 is the neighborhood bounded by North Avenue on the north, York on the east side of the area, First Street on the south, and Route 83 on the west. The study was completed by KLOA, a professional traffic engineering firm. KLOA collected traffic crash studies or history, vehicular speeds, vehicular volumes, and bicycle and pedestrian counts. They also reviewed the existing traffic signage, both intersection control and speed limit signage throughout the neighborhood. On February 20th, the city held a public open house at City Hall. At the open house, city staff, elected officials, and the consultant answered questions from the public, presented draft recommendations from the study and collected comments and input. An impressive turnout came out. This was for both Area 2 and 3, which I'll get to here in a second. We project there are 70 to 80 participants in that open house. So we're very pleased with that feedback. It should be noted that several members of the public requested consideration of a new pedestrian crosswalk on West Avenue in the vicinity of 2nd Street or 3rd Street. Due to the complexity of the volume of vehicles on West Avenue and the elevation change from North Avenue to 2nd Street, a separate study, unfortunately will be necessary to evaluate that complexity and make sure that the right recommendation is made. City staff's committed to commence this effort, a second study in the second half of 2024. The report calls that out. City staff, having reviewed the study recommendations and public input, have worked with KLOA to finalize a report. The final report, dated April 17th, includes recommendations to changes to traffic signage, speed limit signage, and monitoring pedestrian signage and crosswalk enhancements, bicycle routing, and signage in concert with the approved bicycle and ped plan, and potential future intersection improvements. This report can be found on board docs. So all the recommendations come with an expense. The city, similar to Area 1, we have budget funds to take on a portion of the recommendation. And I'll get to that here in a second. But there are also opportunities in the future to coincide some of these recommendations with other programs, such as our contract paving and or bicycle and pedestrian plan, capital improvements. So that said, in Area 1, the city intends to be and will make recommended traffic control signage changes. Examples of that: new stop sign additions where there is uncontrolled intersections, and conversion of yield signs to stop sign recommendations in 2024. We have the budget to do that, and that is our intention. The other recommendations do need to come under consideration with these other projects and analysis. I will tell you that the yield conversion to stop sign in this particular area, I believe, was only 2, which was a little bit of a surprise to me, and you'll understand why when we get to Area 3. That said, there was something like, I want to say, well, I'll just leave it at that. I'm not going to go based off memory there. So I'm super excited about this. The whole intention of this plan and these studies is to drive consistency across Elmhurst and make sure that we're creating neighborhoods that are as safe as possible. And for those reasons, I would appreciate your support on this report. And this is specific to Area 2, not Area 3.
All right.
Thank you.
Anyone else on this report, Area 2? Clerk Tamer, please call the roll.
Nope. Mr. Mayor.
Alderman Bram.
Thank you. And these comments are relevant to both reports, and it touches on something that I heard about while I was off City Council, and I haven't found the documentation yet, but it's been communicated to me that the City Council over the past couple of years, 2-3 years, has passed a policy, and I want to be clear on that, a policy to change all yield signs in the city of Elmhurst to stop signs. When I heard about that, I was concerned then, I'm concerned now. I have in front of me the MUTCD. I do agree that the MUTCD is mentioned in the report, the reports plural, that it is used. But with that said, if the City Council is blanketly following a policy, which I haven't found yet, but if that is accurate, we're ignoring the criteria to do that, what is documented by the MUTCD. And as everybody knows, that's a federal document that Illinois adopted, that the city of Elmhurst has adopted. Yes, a lot of the terminology in there is about guidance and allowing for engineering judgment. But if a policy is out there for us that says just let's do it to eliminate all yield signs, that's a great concern, because it may or may not meet the criteria for a two-way stop, or for that matter, going from a two-way stop to a four-way stop. To kind of give a sample of that, four-way stop intersections, according to the MUTCD, is very difficult to come by. For an example, I don't remember what the vote was on it, but on York, right before the railroad tracks, and Park, that intersection either barely met the MUTCD for a three-way stop, or did not, in my opinion, meet it for an MUTCD. And it's a high volume, high pedestrian traffic area. One of the criteria is an example, which I don't recall either report having a sample of this, or an example, not a sample, is that for a four-way stop, a crash problem as indicated by 5 or more reported crashes in a 12-month period that are susceptible to correction by a multi-stop installation. But we're moving forward with the recommendation of doing four-way stops from two-way stops, I believe, in both of these reports. I believe for this report, and my memory is probably worse than Alderman Brennan's, that there was only 2 yield signs, and therefore there was only 2 conversions. On the next report, there's, I don't want to say significantly, but definitely more. So that's one thing I want to state. I don't know if I could support this, because I don't know if it's the right move for us as a city council to move forward with just replacing all yield signs with stop signs. Two-way stop signs, that is, in most cases, especially when we don't have data to back that up. I do like, it's been mentioned here in public forum, I do like doing the neighborhood studies. It makes sense. Previously, we would pretty much receive concerns from residents of traffic control devices, typically adding, not taking away. And, you know, that kind of always pushes it, just like parking pushes the problem elsewhere in the city. One thing I do want to note, any traffic control device like stop signs, yield signs, two-way, four-way, there's no intention for those, or those should never be utilized for slowing down traffic. They're not meant for traffic control in that manner in regards to speed control. The other thing I just want to kind of touch on, some of the neighbors spoke to about changing from 20 to 25 miles per hour on their block. According to the MUTCD, and I'll just state what the MUTCD states, is that if that speed is at the 85th percentile, then that's what it should be. I'm making an assumption, because I actually didn't look at that part in detail, that this street meets that 85th percentile, and therefore there's that recommendation to go from 20 to 25. I'm an engineer myself, not a civil engineer, but stuff like
data is something that I would fully support, and I don't know if Argyle meets that 85th percentile. Like I said, I'm assuming that it does.
How about if I call on you for
That's the other report. Got it.
And we'll get to that one.
Got it.
I know it's exciting, so stand by.
It is very exciting. All right, I will conclude.
Thank you. Did you have your hand up, Alderman Irby? No.
I'm good. Thank you, Mayor.
Alderman Brennan.
So with respect to the studies, actually, I'm not aware of a blanket policy switching yield to stop. I've challenged the question if that's, we've had that discussion at committee, and I challenge why are we having these studies then if that's what we're going to do? Why don't we just change them all? And the discussions that we had was that, you know, the way we're breaking up these areas, there's a natural flow, you know, whether it's through traffic, you know. One of the reasons we picked College View is because some of the complexity of, you know, how traffic flows through there coming off of West and things of that nature. So I don't, it's important, it's my belief, and what I understand from staff is it's important to look at these areas holistically. And they're by definition, you know, we've looked at one, two are before us today. There are two more under study right now. There's probably, you know, anywhere from 5 to 8 more areas that we would need to look at to complete the city. And again, we're breaking it up so we can look at it realistically with respect to how traffic's flowing off main arteries into the neighborhood, et cetera. So I made the comment in one of our first meetings, if we're going to switch all yields to stop, why don't we just do it and take that out of the scope of the study. And the reality is, dependent upon the flow of traffic, maybe where there's a yield or where there's a stop, maybe it should be the other direction, right? So that there needs to be the flexibility to look at that flow as things have changed over time. So I'm not aware of a blanket adoption of swapping out yields to stop signs, because I was challenging staff with respect to that's what we did in Area 1. But I don't think that was a pull forward to every study that we do. So that's in response to Alderman Bram's comment.
Alderman Hill.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to add to that, I think some of the thought behind why we thought of why it might be considered that's a blanket policy for the city is, I think that came out of, and maybe Alderman Deuter can correct me if I'm wrong, but back when we looked at this earlier, when she was chairing the committee, we had looked at what other cities had done with KLOA as a consultant, what had been their general recommendations. And I believe one of the city recommendations was that they ended up at the end having replaced all their yield signs with stop sign intersection control. And I may be recalling that incorrectly, but I think that's what we saw in examples of other municipalities.
Alderman Deuter.
Thank you, Mayor. I am happy to clarify. I didn't know that this was a question prior to tonight, but I will point out a report from February 27th, 2023. So this was an issue that came up when we looked at the first neighborhood traffic study, and there was one of the issues that was teed up is that before we moved forward the College View recommendations, because consistency is such an important issue, staff and the consultants brought forward the question of yield signs. So on February 27th, there is a report, and I will just read one piece of that report. And again, this is based on the finding from College View. So it's rooted in the College View study, but this was a particular piece that was pulled out and considered in advance of those recommendations. Yield signs may not be recommended for a majority of intersections, about 110 Out of the 711 total intersections in the city of Elmhurst are currently controlled by yield signs in at least one direction. This equates to a relatively small portion, 15% of the city's total. With a relatively limited use in the city, these installations do not provide consistency, may lead to confusion, and lack adherence by motorists. Several Chicagoland suburban communities no longer considered yield signs for residential intersections for these reasons. So the recommendation at the time, which was adopted by this report, is that to increase the level of consistency and reduce confusion in general, yield signs will not be used as traffic control devices at residential intersections and should be replaced with stop signs. So it's in general, it's still meant to be reviewed in the context of each neighborhood, which to Alderman Brennan's point is why we didn't make that blanket change. It really is still looking neighborhood by neighborhood, but this is the guiding principle that was adopted with this report.
I'd like to make one more
Alderman
comment.
Brennan.
Thank you. And so I want to draw a distinction between the two reports. Area 2 is what we're discussing today. As far as, speed limit signs, there is a recommendation, for a 20-mile-an-hour sign, parking zone on 2nd Street adjacent to Salt Creek Park. The other recommendations around speed limit, and I think it's probably already 20 miles an hour there. I'm sorry, I may have misspoke there. It's an addition of a sign, right, to make it more visible and posted. The other recommendations are to put, yellow borders around the speed limit signs to make them more visible as well. So there's no change of speed limit in Area 2 per the report. I want the council to understand that in case you're concerned with respect to public comments earlier. Thank you.
All right. Still on study Area 2, any additional discussion? Alderman Bram.
First, I want to thank Alderman Deuter for pointing that report out to me. I guess we have different interpretations of that report. There's 2 recommendations in the report, and following those 2 documented recommendations, there's a paragraph that states a citywide decision on these 2 policies will help guide the city's consultant as they continue their analysis. That recommendation is it states, as already stated, but I'll reiterate, yield signs will not be used as a traffic control device at residential intersections. It's not, may not, it is will not be used. That's very direct, very specific. The verbiage states that we will no longer be using yield signs in the city of Elmhurst. Not for new intersections, for any intersections. That's my interpretation of it, I get it. But it is, to me, very clear that this was a stated policy. That was the decision made prior to this council meeting. So that does concern me, because to me that may conflict with what the MUTCD does state. What were my other notes? In regards to just overall, I hope that we're considering the MUTCD. Well, let me rephrase. I know we're considering the MUTCD, but I'm concerned the impact on what I deem this report says as a policy in that paragraph stating those 2 new policies. If there is any type of conflict, that to me says that that traffic control device, whatever it is, wouldn't be warranted. And when I started as an elected official long ago, in public affairs and safety, we were always told that there's a liability if we're installing any traffic control device that's not warranted. With that said, I mean, I have some anecdotal evidence on that. Right at my intersection, Van Auken and Belden, it's a 4-way stop. There's I want to say 3 4-way stops in a row. I was out cutting my grass, car rolled right through, not rolled, drove right through that intersection. And Alderman Nudira and I spoke about it right before the meeting tonight. I actually stopped this person, which I wouldn't recommend doing. But I stopped this person, and by speaking with her, it turned out to be my neighbor down the block. And she told me that she grew up here, she knows this neighborhood, and there was no concern of her just driving through the intersection. The reason why she drove through the intersection is she felt that, and this is literally what she told me, she felt that it wasn't needed. I've seen a lot of communities, Franklin Park where I grew up, relatively recently, within the last handful of years, they are going to the same model of traffic control devices on every single intersection. And you literally see cars roll through those traffic control devices or just blow them off altogether. That is a huge concern. As I look at, I'll be specific, study 2's map, that's the direction that this study is going towards. If it's warranted, I have no issue, but I'm concerned if all of these intersections warrant that, and I'm concerned that we may be going down a path that is more dangerous than helpful. That's my biggest concern here. I'm going to stop speaking about this one. I will roll with the punches because I want to spend a lot more time with staff to understand what they interpret as this February 27th report and followed up ordinance. I will then make a decision when the ordinance comes around.
Alderman Brennan.
Thank you. So just one last comment on this, and I'm not an engineer. I'm not even going to pretend to be. I wouldn't be a good engineer. My mind's not wired that way. That said, you know, I'd like to believe that I am, you know, pretty logical in the way I think. I look at uncontrolled intersections. That's a bad idea. Hopefully everybody would agree to that. And, you know, just like a stop sign, a yield sign, I see more often than not, it's certainly optional. I don't see cars slowing down. I mean, it's almost equivalent, in my opinion, to an uncontrolled intersection. A stop sign, on the other hand, it's very clear. It's binary. You're supposed to stop. There's no room for interpretation. Is that human behavior? Maybe not. But I think there's a higher likelihood for somebody to blow through a yield sign. There could be a pedestrian, there could be another car. In my neighborhood, I'm in the 7th Ward. If it's yield, I'm treating it like almost a semi-stop, and I have the right-of-way. Meaning, if the other traffic, other street's supposed to yield, I'm a defensive driver when there's a yield sign. Maybe I'm a defensive driver, you know, just in general, but I don't believe that, you know, I think we should look at these neighborhoods because I do agree that, you know, these flows, our city has changed, you know, the population has changed. I think it's a good idea going into this. I have no issue with either a stop sign. I like the idea of changing it from yield to stop. It's very clear. There's no room for interpretation. And I do believe that the individuals that would, you know, run through a stop sign are for sure running through a yield. So logically speaking, I support we hired an engineer to look at this. We've had discussion at committee. I've had side discussions with staff. I'm in support of this report. I do think it follows the spirit of why we're doing it, to improve safety and consistency throughout Elmhurst. And I ask for your support. Thank you.
All right. Any other discussion? I'll support Tamer.
Brennan?
Aye.
Irby?
Aye.
Deuter?
Aye.
Barimus?
Aye.
Hill?
Aye.
Schenko?
Aye.
Jensen?
Aye.
Bram?
Aye.
Cahill?
Aye.
Toludo? Absent. Park? Absent. Nudera?
Aye.
Bastido?
Aye.
Nardini?
Aye.
12 ayes, 0 nays, 2 absent.
12 ayes, 0 nays, 2 absent. Report 6.1 is adopted. was going to make a comment, but I think I'll hold it to the end of report 6.2. Clerk Tamer, please read the report.
It is therefore the recommendation of the Public Affairs and Safety Committee that the City Council approve the Neighborhood Traffic Study, Area Number 3, final report. The city consider budgeting dollars in future years for the implementation of the recommendations, and that the city attorney be authorized to prepare the necessary documents, including any municipal code changes for the city council approval. Signed, Alderman Michael Brennan, Chair, Alderman Jacob Hill, Vice Chair, absent Alderman Guido Nardini.
May I have a motion to adopt report 6.2? Alderman Brennan with a motion, Alderman Hill with a second, Alderman Brennan.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. So this report is similar to procedurally the process in which KLOA went through as they did for Area 1 as well as Area 2. This is Area 3. The area is defined. Thought I had that in there. Oh, here we go. Sorry. St. Charles Road to the north, York Street to the east, Madison to the south, and Spring Road to the west. So, and I should have maybe asked, prior to bringing this before the council, it's very rare that we have, 3 written documents here. We have 4 individuals from the public this evening sharing their concern. I would like the opportunity to speak with staff, just to find out if there is similar, concern in the open house. But there's no intense pressure to push this through. I would like to bring it back to committee, just out of respect for the folks that have come here tonight and folks that have taken time to write to their concern. I guess my procedural comment would be.
So we've got a motion and a second. So I think I'd have to ask you to withdraw your motion with the consent of the second.
That's why I thought I messed up when, yeah. So.
Not too late, though.
Yeah, all right.
If you believe in time
travel. I would like
travel.
to undo my motion.
All right.
To bring this before the committee tonight.
Does that meet the approval of your second?
Yes.
All right. Then we will, with the motion reversed, it's at the discretion of the chair. So report 6.2 will be taken back to committee.
Thank you.
Very good. All right. Thank you. Reports and recommendations of elected officials. I will say, on the topic, there's not been a policy that we have passed an ordinance saying all stop signs will be replacing yield signs, but we have taken a very innovative approach on what we're doing on these neighborhood studies to try to look area by area, as Alderman Bram said, as opposed to saying somebody wants a stop sign, so we put one in, and I look at the area around Oneida and York and what a patchwork that was when we looked at it, so this certainly makes sense. There is a good deal, and I hope you discuss this in your committee, there's a great deal of engineer discretion between stop and yield signs. There was, as we've gone through these studies, a decision not to make that overall policy, but it does make sense when people come up to yield signs, they tend to just slow down. They may not look both directions. There could be a pedestrian. It's harder for the police to issue a citation at a yield sign than a stop sign. It's a clear violation. So they do, I think we're ahead of the curve here, but I think that's something you can discuss again when you go back to committee. Additionally, I want to tell the City Council that, as you know, with respect to the project to connect the York sidewalk on the west side of the street from north of 290 to south, our quick take legislation passed both chambers this week, and it's on, actually last week, and it's on the way to the governor's desk, which I anticipate will be signed, which will allow us to immediately proceed to take the small piece of property we need to complete that project. So I was pleased to hear that. Thank you for the pet parade people, Alderman Varamus. I'm sorry Lola couldn't make it this year, but we'll see you next year. I saw the pictures. Great event. Thank you for that. For our aldermen and the public, our Memorial Day parade and ceremony start at 9:30 a.m. And at the end of the parade is our ceremony. It's one of the best Memorial Day ceremonies, so I hope members of the public and our aldermen will come around and listen to the presentations there. I also wanted to report that through DuPage Managers and Mayors Conference, we hosted 50 to 60 mayors who joined us at the Founders Plaza at Elmhurst University, where three different councils of governance, yeah, I thought that's what it was, spoke on behalf of the importance of local government distributive fund, which I think many people here are now educated on, and why those dollars are so important to the municipalities. And it included, one of the three speakers was Mayor Phil Cease from Wheaton, who spoke on behalf of DMMC. I see there's an article in the Tribune about it, and there might be some coverage. So we have been fortunate that I think that our local legislators that serve Elmhurst have been very supportive of that. But if you see that, it was thank you to Elmhurst University for hosting it, and a lot of effort from staff from DMMC that coordinated the thing amongst all of the councils of government. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one item. Along with the Memorial Day ceremony, City Hall is closed that day, which means our meetings will be moved to Tuesday next week for the council and for the public. Thank you.
Are there any other reports from elected officials? Alderman Hill.
Thank you, Mayor. This might have gone in announcements, but this is as good a place as any perhaps for this. Just a reminder with respect to the traffic studies that are being published. I'm a librarian, so maybe it's just me, but I find them fascinating reading, and I encourage, again, the public to read through, not just their relevant area as we go through these traffic studies, but all traffic studies as they're published. They're not very long documents, but they do contain a lot of very interesting information that I hope illuminates some of the questions and comments that I and others have heard, and there was good summative comments in each of the relative sections, so you could just get a good sense of it by skimming it. But again, those traffic studies I think are very interesting readings, and I hope the public avails themselves of those studies that we paid for. Thank you.
And only a librarian could tell people they could enjoy reading traffic studies. Any other reports? With that, I believe Alderman Bramus.
Thank you. I just want to say, on behalf of the Pet Parade Committee, thank you to Public Works, the Police Department, and Fire Department for being out there. That parade is a lot of work. It was a hot day, so we appreciate everything you did. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? All right. Any other business to be brought before the council? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. Alderman Bastide with a motion, Alderman Nardini with a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. We are adjourned. Thank you.